Welcome to 247 Real Talk. I'm your host, Julian Perry. It's a pleasure to be here with you once again, another week for another episode of the 247 Real Talk podcast in 2025. It's going to be another short episode this week because I'm still recovering on my second week of prescribed steroids to try to stop the cough. I'm going to try to get through this episode without this lingering cough that's been going on for almost a month. I'm going to talk a bit about, give you an update on my knee, which is not much, and a few other things as we go through this episode, and talk about something that is looming as we enter into a new time and a new president. So sit back, relax, and I'll be right back. All right, so I'm back. Thank you again for joining me on the 247 Real Talk podcast. I'm recording late this week. Yesterday I wanted to record my usual Wednesday night, but I was coughing so hard I couldn't get through any conversation. I hope I can make it through tonight. It is Thursday, January 16th, 9:50 p.m. And this week has been another challenging week with my physical therapy as I try to get my knee to bend to somewhere between 120 and 120 degrees as a final sign off and as a sort of close to the end of the road of where I need back to be normal movement, and then the rest of it will be continuously working with weights and treadmills and stuff to build up the strength in the knee. And all this is in preparation for probably the next 8 months of building it back up so that I can then have my left knee replaced. So this is going to be about a 2-year journey altogether, but I thank you all for your prayers and for your best wishes and your support. I've received a lot of that. And that's enough about me and my knee for now. There's nothing really newsworthy. But before I go on to my main topic for this episode, I want to talk about a little bit about those fires in LA. More about social media and social media personalities who have looked to creating t-shirts and all these sorts of things, saying in the name of charity, but are really looking to optimize and capitalize on the how riveting this has been and the amount of celebrities who've lost their homes. And the thing is, the media, again, we need to do something to get rid of the way the media works, because this media is so focused on highlighting everywhere they can all these stars that lost their homes. There are thousands and thousands of people who we've never heard of, who are not stars, who are hardworking men and women who've lost their homes, everything, their memories. They don't have a second $1 million apartment in Manhattan to go to, or a $10 million estate in Atlanta, or a $50 million estate in Florida. That's all they had. They're not celebrities. They're not rich. And we have not seen the stories of countless people and the countless animals that were left behind, locked in barns and burned. I want to use that as a sort of way to introduce a spotlight on someone I wanted to, or someone I wanted to place the spotlight on this week. And, I have maybe a dozen social media personalities that I follow. I started following them because of their skits, their comedy skits. Some to break the ice, some is foolish and silly but makes you laugh, and I think the world needs so much laughter. And I follow these people. And one of them is a social media personality. Her name is Evelyn Gonzalez. And while a lot of the others are out there, doing things that are sort of bringing attention and building their social media, this young lady has been taking her car, taking donations, I believe taking some of her own money, packing her car with goods, water, food, and ready-to-eat food and energy drinks and all that, and driving around LA to the firefighters, to the police, to the military, and giving them these free donations so they can be sustained while they fight these fires that affected so many people. And I have to commend her on that. The other day I saw a short post from her where she was bawling, she was in tears because she saw a video of a horse that was in a stable and the people didn't unlock the door. We don't know the circumstances under which the people left, right? We don't even know if the people maybe died. But the point is to see that and to know that the horse did everything it could to break down the door and it couldn't and it burned to death just goes to show you the breadth and the width of this tragedy, and that there are those who live in these areas who have burrowed into nature's land and built their houses amongst the woods, and and can afford to say to the insurance companies, I'm rich, I don't need coverage. If I burn, I'll just build again. But in between them is a bunch of normal folks who simply found a place to live and to buy a home and to realize the American dream, and they've lost everything. We must not forget those who cannot afford to rebuild and may have been stuck in between areas where insurance is never going to pay them back for their losses and they can't afford to rebuild. That's restarting life. Depending on what age you're at, even if we're human beings and we're resilient, that's the real tragedy here. But mainstream news is just concerned about the celebrities who lost their $50 million mansions. And I keep repeating how much media's lost its way and its whole purpose. So anyway, moving on from that, we have a situation where on Monday, January 20th, we will have a new president who is President-elect Donald Trump, who is there for the second time. There's been a lot of scary stuff in the news of how much they're going to immediately hit the ground running with Project 2025, which he claimed had nothing to do with. But I'm going to be highlighting many things I go through this administration, his administration, because I'm not going to let it off the hook. And I'm hoping you will join me by listening, sharing, subscribing, and making the noise louder, because we have to stand strong on our positions and remind Washington that they're elected by the people to serve the people. We cannot just sit there and say, oh, we lost or we don't agree with this policy, so we're going to fold our arms and pout our lips. Inactivity and inaction does not bring you results. Sitting passive because you just accept it just only allows you to sit quietly and not complain. But one of the things that has been buzzing around a lot of places is President Trump has said that he wants all federal employees who are been on work from home since COVID, at least hybrid, to be back in the office full time. And when I saw that, I kind of thought, we have a real problem as human beings. We go through a tragedy. It's like the God when I need you effect. We go through a tragedy. We're hurting. We're in pain. We don't know where to turn. We feel hopeless and helpless. We fall on our knees and we say, God, help us. And through his miracles, his power, his mighty name, his ways that are much bigger than we could ever imagine, we get a path towards relief. And we overcome. And we get big and strong again. And as time goes on, we forget that moment when we fell on our knees, where we were hopeless and helpless. When COVID hit, we were hopeless and helpless. We lost millions of people during COVID. I personally got COVID in March of 2020, I believe, as soon as it came out. My wife worked at the hospital in Queens, New York, and was in the emergency room working and was in contact with patient 1 who started spreading it in Queens. We were losing at one point almost 1,000 people in New York a day. Then Governor Cuomo would come on the air every day and they would run the numbers down, and 800, 900, 1,000 deaths every single day. The world lost probably 3 or 4 million people. What we what we fail to have done is to have learned any lessons, it seems. Getting vaccinated and getting vaccines for COVID or to help you fight the sickness itself doesn't address the issue. The issue here was the world is changing. There are bugs and superbugs that are developing that we are susceptible to, and we cannot be proactive with because we have to wait till it strikes. So our response as humans is always reactive. One of the things we should have learned that when you pack people in a building and they're breathing and sneezing and coughing and talking and water droplets, and if they're going into the air, and in the filtration system is traveling from floor to floor and space to space on the floor, you have created a perfect breathing grounds. And breathing, both breathing and breathing. For the ease of spread of these illnesses, these bacteria. If we are looking and we still counting, because there's still people here and they're dying from COVID. And I don't know, I should have checked before this episode to see what the number is at now around the world, but my point is, we are so presumptuous, so stupid, so holier than thou, so forget God, we don't need him right now, that we're going to take people, put them back into these same buildings. These buildings might have been, the desks may have been wiped or whatever. But nobody went into all the filtration systems and completely, cleaned them, and nobody put new systems in space to isolate germs. How can you? So we have to learn, what do we do to prevent the next pandemic that, like COVID could, and the one before that preceded it, could be 100 years away or 100 days away? I keep up with the news as a podcaster, and I see different viruses out of China and these places that they're worried and concerned about. And then all of a sudden you hear, oh, there's one case in the United States. All it takes is for something to mutate and get into one person in a big office building. And for that person to sneeze and cough and wipe their sleeve thinking it's the common cold. Except if it is more contagious and more deadly than COVID, and if it kills faster. By the time we realize the error of our ways, of our presumptuousness, of our ignorance, how many more of us have to die because politicians decide that capitalism is more important than life? If they want politicians and businessmen and all these moguls and all these real estate people who own millions of buildings and are complaining that they can't afford to fuel their yachts because their buildings are empty and they're not making money. If they want to make money and they claim they're so brilliant, then step to the challenge and find new ways of utilizing that empty space to make it profitable again, not to the detriment of human beings. The enemy that we cannot see is that superbug that lies, that's probably already here and just mutating to a point where it can overcome us. Will it happen next week? Will it happen next month? Will it happen next year? Next 100 years? We don't know. But is our solution and our response to go right back to the way we were and just act like nothing, like COVID never happened, and then we'll react when COVID happens or something worse again, and hopefully we'll have enough personnel to count the dead bodies and the 18-wheelers stacked with frozen, the 18-wheeler frozen containers that I saw at hospitals around New York piled with bodies. Did we forget that people were taken to hospitals and died and stored in these ice containers, these 18-wheelers, and families came to claim them because they heard the person died at that hospital, and they had to wait 30 and 60 days to get the body because it was buried all the way in the back underneath hundreds of other bodies? Did we forget what it was like? Did we forget the pictures of people breathing and raising? I saw a picture of one young lady. Every time she breathed, her legs and chest raised up off the gurney. She was so struggling for so much. She was dead shortly thereafter. Did we remember what we went through to get simple masks, to get people to wear them? Do the politicians remember the politicians who died because they ignored it and said that COVID was a hoax? My family needs me. I need them. When we have to part ways, I pray that it's a long time from now and it's when the Almighty makes that decision. Not to say that he can't make the decision in the middle of a pandemic, because obviously he did, because there's many of us who recovered and many of us who I was really bad. I mean, I went over that story. I'm not going to go over it again, but I remember my wife looking at me and saying, "Can you breathe?" But we are so ignorant as human beings. We are such narcissists, so greedy, that the benefit of mankind can never reside as the top and utmost part of our minds, our hearts, and our souls, and our actions. Only temporarily can they do that when we're all in fear. We don't know if our neighbor, our friend, our mother, our father, our children, or we ourselves will fall victim to the disease. Then the humanity in us comes out. A forced humanity, a false humanity. Because once we get past the hurdle, we forget the hurdle, we forget the pain. We go right back to greed and power and hurting each other and inflicting our own demands and ideologies upon others, even if it hurts their lives. We go back to wanting to create that divide, that wealth gap where the rich can snub down at the poor again. The amazing thing about COVID is it didn't spare you regardless of your wealth. It didn't spare you regardless of your socioeconomic status or your political status. I don't want to call names, but I can think of politicians who lost their lives. And here we are, not in office yet, President-elect Trump saying he wants all federal employees to go back in the office. Why? What are you losing by having these people have a better quality of life? Having a hybrid schedule where they can spend a little bit more time with their families in this short trip called life. If you guys ever click on that if you have Windows, for instance, you click on the yellow icon on the left of your toolbar at the bottom that has the temperature and stuff, and it brings up a short screen, a half screen of the Edge browser, and it brings up breaking news, the widgets. Look at it every day. Just decide to make that a part of your routine and watch the news and see every day the death announcement of someone or two people is on there breaking news. And it goes from 20-something years old, excuse me if my mic is getting, 20-something years old, all the way to 90-something years old. Imagine that. Every single day. So no one is spared. If you think that because you have wealth and you have power and you have security and the best doctors on your beck and call, that you can escape death, that you can escape death caused by your ignorance, you're wrong. Here's an opportunity to learn from COVID and not only create better environments for the future for our employees and for workers, but also to give them back a little bit to the quality of life. Have you ever stopped to think that in many cases in this country, the average person, the low income, the low middle, the middle, and even the upper middle to some extent, work well into the late 60s or 70s to be able to afford the rest of their lives, except the rest of their lives sometimes is a few days or a few years. We work our entire lives so that we can retire and enjoy a few years. We ever thought about that? We've created a society that's supposed to be number one, and yet you look at places in the Caribbean around the world where they retire at 55 and people live longer to 90, and they can say, I enjoyed 35, 40 more years, almost half of my life I enjoy retired. From children, we are born, we go to pre-K, we go to K, we go through primary school, elementary school, high school, college, postgraduate, work. When do we get to live this thing called life? In between all of that work, we get 2 weeks off a year, maybe 3, to go fly somewhere and call it a vacation, to come back to the stresses that are sometimes even more than when we left. Is this how the world thinks that life should be? Is this how this great United States thinks that we want to call it great? By making people work their fingers to the bones, many of them, the majority of the population, to barely survive. And then when you do get to a point where your body physically can't do it anymore and you retire, then you deal with not many years left, not enough money to enjoy life as you should. Maybe by then you're struggling with some health challenges. You're dealing with insurance companies that don't want to pay, even though you paid your entire 30 or 40 years into their premiums. Oh, I don't want to get started with insurance companies. That's going to be an episode in its own, because I recently saw some additional things. I have lots to say about that. But the point being is, I appeal to state governments, at least city governments, state governments. If we can't stop what President-elect Trump is going to do right now, he's the president, give back to as many as you can by working out systems that preserve a work-life balance. And hybrid does that. Everyone I've spoke to, private companies, public government organizations, all say that people have been so blessed by this change that there very few industries have seen any lowering in productivity. Matter of fact, most see increased, because there's no commute. So if there's no commute, people get up, go in front of their computers like I do when I'm on my work from home days. You do something. Someday during the day between meetings, you go take a shower, you come back. You start at 7 o'clock in the morning. For me, 8-hour day, you could end at 3, but there's a meeting at 4 and a meeting at 5 that you would normally decline, but you're going to take it because you're not commuting your home, so you could be productive. So many people I talk to do the same thing, give even more of themselves. And they're willing to, because they're getting something back. The lack of that commute every day in the subways and the dangerous trains and the traffic and the stress of people with, it bundled into public transportation, people with mental health issues, and it is a lot. We need to start doing the right thing for human beings. I know what I'm going to call this episode. I'm going to title this episode, "He Who Does Not Learn from His Past is Doomed to Repeat It." We don't know when the next pandemic will come and from where. If we are stupid and arrogant and foolish and ignorant enough and boastful and irresponsible and holier than thou and mightier than everyone to believe that we control what happens next, I will say to you again, nothing that happens is a surprise to God. And I can just imagine the mighty sitting looking at us, shaking his head, saying, look, there was a pandemic in this world. I told the world that there would be trials and tribulations. Many people reacted in faith. Many people lost their lives. But it's my hope that these human beings will understand who is in charge and who is on the throne. And hopefully these things will change those who are left into a most right, and twist them and shape them into a more righteous human being. Instead, we have forgotten really quickly. We're so fickle. We've forgotten the pain and the tears, the suffering, the dying, the bodies, families, entire families and generations wiped out. Let's not forget. You could say it all you want, but we have a creator who's still on the throne. That we have been given many tools, including intelligence, compassion, knowledge, and we've been given the right and the ability to recognize ignorance. We, the people who've elected those, whether you like it or not, there was a popular vote, we who have elected those to do this job for us. Don't just sit back now and hide in the shadows when the pain starts to come and you're embarrassed because you made a choice. Stand behind the choice, whoever we are, inclusive all of us. Stand behind our right to hold our government and our officials in Washington, that aristocracy, responsible. Let's make sure that we pay attention, that we don't fall to the exact tools they're using to create havoc and distractions in our lives, so we pay very little attention to what they're doing, to the laws that they're passing, and to the impact it'll have on our lives. Don't, when we hear something changes, our law is made and they said, look, this is going to have a financial impact. Don't just sit there and say, I don't understand what it means. I'll wait and see. Find out what it means. And if it means that more of us will be hurt, then start sharing, start caring, start making a difference. Call yourselves and others to action so that the noise from the population becomes so loud that government has to back down. Otherwise, we are just as I said. We're just pawns in the political game being kicked around between Democrats and Republicans. Two political ideologies to whose amusement we exist. Come on, it's January. Let me be able to have a conversation with you in December and say, we did it. I'm going to leave it there for this week. It's cold in New York. Matter of fact, I'm looking at my cameras and I'm seeing that the snow's coming down. Is it sticking? Yeah, it's sticking a bit. This has been more of a winter that we've had for the last 4 years. And even though we know it's New York, we kind of got used to mild winters. And now this one's been a little tough. It's been a little cold. And with the metal, the titanium in my knee, I can tell you when it's going to get cold or snow because I feel the pain of the cold metal. Anyway, whatever you do, stay warm, stay safe wherever you are in the country. Those in LA, we are praying for you. We're praying for those who have lost everything, that God and this world and humankind will show you a way to rebuild your lives. We're so sorry for the memories you've lost, but remember, while you've lost the memories, if you have your lives, you still have the opportunity to create new ones for yourselves and those to come. Have a great week, a great weekend. Do right thing. Do good things. Do things that make your heart palpitate with joy, because what comes from helping another, from putting one foot in front of the other to making positive change, is living. Until the next time, please take care of yourselves. Thank you so much for being a partner with me and a supporter of this channel. And please take care of each other.